As a first generation American, I was sold on what the idea of this country is and what it represented. And the original vision of the founding fathers of what the US should be is very extremely coincidentally also very aligned with Bitcoin and the way that Bitcoin works, right? So it's almost as if we need to go back to what it once was, not what it became after the introduction of the Federal Reserve in 1913, right? And for that, in order for that to happen, Jason, there needs to be a political movement. And I think a lot of people shy away from the political movement side of things because of, you and I both know this, how difficult it is to effectuate change politically. And you mentioned, I think you mentioned the NRA, right? Like, try passing a gun law. Try it. It's literally almost impossible. And Corey Clipston wrote a great piece, Race to Avoid the War. He was talking about a 10 million to 11 million, transigent, I can't pronounce it correctly, but this minority of Bitcoiners that just, they will not budge on this issue. And I think if we're able to capture that, we might not have to move to El Salvador. Right. But there needs to be a political process. I think the politics need to be involved. I think people need to get active here, and they need to be able to elect into office people that are pro Bitcoin. Right. I think that's the way. I think that's the way that we really protect ourselves in this particular situation, because as it stands right now, we have a good portion, a large amount of elected officials, I might add, that are hell bent on stopping this dead in its tracks. I mean, Elizabeth Warren made it part of her campaign. She's like, I'm building an anti-crypto. She's declaring war. Like, she's literally saying this is not going to happen on my watch. And please correct me if I'm wrong here, Jason. She sits on the Senate Banking Committee, doesn't she?
She certainly does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Certainly does. And she's had a lot of influence, probably oversized influence, at the White House as well. One of her disciples, Rohit Chopra, is head of the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, which is a major agency. So there's, that's unfortunate to see that. I mean, when she did the war on Wall Street and Occupy Wall Street, I think that was, people understood that, but like, first of all, the conversations you and I are having, like the fact that we're able to have them, in this country and it's a reminder to me of a little bit of like the Federalist Papers, because those were done anonymously. Like when you hear what we're talking about, if you didn't know we were talking about Bitcoin, you'd think we're just a couple of crazy people, like paranoid the government's coming to take our stuff. And so that makes us sound like a little bit like we're, Bitcoiners who just want to keep things the way they are. The problem I think that we're going to run into is, the biggest problem is going to be, I think, the Bitcoiners that, and I hear this almost all the time when they'll say something like, Jason, it's great what you're doing, but you're really just wasting your time. I'm getting Bitcoin because I don't want to deal with all the politicians. I'm just going to, not show up, and I don't want to, that's the reason I have Bitcoin, is because I don't want to deal with the government. Well, the problem is the government wants to deal with you. You know what I mean? So you can ignore the 800-pound gorilla on the other side of the room and try to like read your book, but you're probably going to be disturbed at some point. And so I think there has to be a realization we got to do something about that 800-pound gorilla.